Good evening. We're ready to get started. Thank you all for coming. Grab a seat, there are plenty available. I know we have folks online. My name's John Carney, I'm your governor. It's great to see all of you here, particularly those of you who don't have masks on because that means you're fully vaccinated. Those who are wearing masks may be fully vaccinated as well, and that's great. It's just so great to be live in front of real people. It's been 15 or 16 or however many months since we've had live meetings and people in person. It just feels so great to be here in Bancroft tonight for this presentation about the district's and the state's plans to build a new school here on the east side of Wilmington, a commitment that I made as your governor about over a year ago, several years ago actually. When I first was elected, after Dr. Susan Bunting, our Secretary of Education, did an assessment of schools across the city and across our state, we decided we really needed to roll up our sleeves and help the educators here in the Christina School District within the city of Wilmington. And one of the things that was a priority from the beginning is to improve the school buildings because they represent, I think, for the community, our commitment to the children, right? And that's what this meeting tonight is really all about, is our commitment to the children here on the east side of Wilmington and from around the city and maybe from outside of the city. We hope that the children and their parents will choose and select a brand new building like we're going to talk about tonight. I want to recognize the two city councilwomen who I see, Michelle Harley, who's up. We've met with her and she is very engaged, and Xanthia was here. Where's Xanthia? Right in front of me as well. Xanthia, thank you. And I know Tom Ogden's here representing the mayor, and we appreciate all of you coming out tonight. If I had my preferences, I know there are people online, there'd be more people from the community, people who live in the neighborhood, because we need, this is their neighborhood, right? And we have plans to improve, not just to build a new school on the east side, but to work with the mayor and council in improving the east side neighborhoods as well, and just kind of build and create a positive environment for everybody. I know there are educators here, a lot of educators from Christina and other schools in the city and around Newcastle County, and I just want to thank you for your tremendous work over the last 15 very difficult months as we did some in person, some remote instruction, and really, for me, it was captured as I was at Stubbs with the preschool children, and there was a teacher, and she had her little laptop computer, and she was teaching like 4 or 5 kids online. She was basically looking into her computer screen, and it became very clear to me how important it was to get children back in school and how hard our teachers and educators were working under the current environment. So I'm delighted to be here. One of the commitments we made at the state level is to, as opposed to having to go to referendum for the improvements we're making in this school, to pay for them 100% with state resources. And we're pleased, and I see Tizzy Lockman who's here. And Representative Stephanie Bolden is here, and I want to thank both of them and their colleagues for making those resources available so that we can bring a beautiful brand new school here to the city of Wilmington. Dan Shelton is our new partner here when we first started. We're very excited to work with Dan and his team and to go through their presentation tonight. Thank you very much again for joining us.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate and all your support that you've given, not just this community with this project, but all the support you've been given Christina School District specific and also education specific. What you put forward in your budget this year on education was unbelievable for the work that we're going to be able to do now on behalf of children and specifically children here in the city of Wilmington and supporting a lot of the Reading Commission's initiatives. So thank you. So additional introductions that I would just like to do. We do have 3 members of our school board. I saw 3. Alethea Smith Tucker. Monica Moriak, and Donald Patton. And probably inappropriate, but we're sitting in Bancroft, and if you're going to talk about Bancroft, I think we're all blessed today to have somebody that also almost is a synonym with Bancroft. Mr. Pritchett, thank you for coming tonight. So as we go forward tonight, we are really hoping to get some really good input from you all tonight. There's a lot to present. We're going to try to do it quickly because we want to be able to hear from you all. There's been quite a few meetings, and I'm going to let the architects go through that in a minute. There's been quite a few meetings already where we gained a lot of public input, and there's a lot more to be done. We are still in initial planning stages. We don't have a plan yet, right? We're building a plan. We're developing a plan based on the input from you all and what we know we need. Lots of input from our educators specifically in this building. So we tonight are going to give you a kind of an update of where we are, an update of where things we hope will go. We did, as was said, have a commitment this year of an additional $65 million for this project. That's an amazing investment in the East Side. So I'm not going to talk a lot now. I'm going to get into the presentation, and then we'll be back for sort of a Q&A. For those of you that are online, there's at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. What we'd ask you to do is please use that as a form of communication back and forth with questions. That way we can track what we've answered and what we haven't answered. So click on Q&A. There is a chat there if you just have a comment, but we really want to capture kind of those questions and our answers. We have some facilitators that are going to be sitting at computers answering, and then we'll also do some live back and forth because some of the questions are going to come from the audience and some of the questions are going to come from online. And we're going to have the new way of doing business, which is a hybrid meeting this evening. All right. So without further ado, I believe I am turning it over to Maureen.
To me. Well, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Maureen Rosansky with the architectural team BSA plus A ABHA.
Carl Creenan, also with the architecture team.
So we're going to just briefly, next slide, please, go through a rough agenda just so you have an understanding of the general order of the presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We really wanted to explain the process, how we got here today. As Dr. Shelton had mentioned, we're just in the beginning. There's a lot of other steps to go forward, but we really wanted to take you through the process and how we really got to where we are today and how we've gathered all of that information. And through all of those meetings, really what the key drivers that have presented themselves in some of the major aspects of this project that we want to hold forward as we move through the project. We're going to go through the building site and circulation. There's some very important aspects that we want to talk through with you and note, as well as where we are with the plan. Again, the plan and the components are very schematic, and we, again, want some input from you all. In addition to that, the building context, what the building wants to look like. This is a brand new building, and we want to get your feedback and input on that as well. And then as Dr. Shelton said, we'll open it up for questions, and we want more feedback and questions from you all. This is really to hear from you tonight. That's the real importance here. Next slide, please. So I won't read through all of these, but what we wanted to identify and really highlight to you all is how we got here. We started this process back in October of last year, and we've had a lot of meetings, over 30 plus meetings that involved a lot of stakeholders with the community, with the public, with the staff that operates and works with the students day in, day out, with the city, with the state. So there's been a lot of input to date, and that will continue. This isn't a one and done. This process will continue throughout all the design phases. But we just wanted to let you know that really we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the students themselves. We had some great meetings with them and parents as well. So we're looking to continue that engagement as we move forward, starting with tonight too. Next slide, please. Again, I won't read all of these, but when we were looking at, again, the premise of this building is to be a state-of-the-art grade 1 through 8 school for the elementary and middle school students. And it's really important for us as we were starting the process that we talk with everybody, every aspect of this building, so that we can hear what those needs are and really capture that. That builds the program, the educational specifications, so that we are keeping the students in the forefront and making sure that all of their needs are met. So this is just a listing of all of the different aspects that make the building whole that we had talked through. These were months and months of long meetings, which we gathered a lot of great feedback. And again, these are ongoing as well as the design progresses. Next slide, please. We wanted to highlight some of the drivers. So from all of these discussions that we've had since October, we've gotten that feedback and really started to develop some general parameters to the project, some general understanding that are key aspects to it. Again, as we said, it's a state-of-the-art grades 1 through 8 facility for the elementary school students and middle school students. With that, we realized there's some it's a shared building, and we want it to be a family, a community together, but we also realize that the elementary school students need to have some separation from the middle school students. So that was a key element that as we were moving forward with the design, that they have kind of an elementary school and a middle school feeling within the building itself. And of course, a lot of shared aspects to the building as well. With this building as it stands today, there's so much integrated into the community spaces and areas that are used by the community, and those are key aspects that we want to make sure that we have in the new facility and beyond. We really got a lot of feedback on how we could improve that as well. We wanted to make sure it was important that we know parking is a big issue here now. We understand there's a lot of on-street parking. So in looking at the new design, we want to address the staff parking, and we're looking at an underground parking structure to be able to help with that and relieve that on-street parking issue that you currently are dealing with. Want to make sure it's really important to know that Bancroft School that we're sitting in today is going to remain operational during the entire duration of construction. There is no other place for the students to be occupied, so they will be here while the new construction is occurring. What that means is with the new site, and we'll show this more specifically, is the Drew office, the district office will be demolished and relocated off-site. It will not be a part of a complex or the school building. And then just realizing that the Pyle School remains untouched. It's not changing in its instruction at all, but that remains in place as well. And just real big picture, as we were talking through the project cost, early on in the planning, it was looked at whether could we renovate this building versus just building a new facility. And the reality is to renovate a building, to bring it up to new code, to provide all of what it needs to be a state-of-the-art facility, the cost to renovate, it was pretty much the same as a new facility. So it didn't make sense because you couldn't renovate to get to all of the requirements that are met. So that's how we're here today to talk to you about the new facility that's proposed. Next slide, please. Carl? Carl's going to take this.
Yeah, so I'm going to take over and kind of give an explanation of how the plan has evolved. To date, we've really been meeting with a lot of people to understand what the needs are, and we're just on the cusp of deciding how those needs could be met within a new school on this site. So here's this part of the east side where we all are. Next slide, please. And this to kind of give you an orientation. The north is towards the upside. The blue box at the top is the current Bancroft School where we are now. Drew is just to the south and across the street. There's also parking on that parcel and the next parcel, and then some playground areas as well. Compton Park is to the left, and the Pyle School, as you can see, to the bottom side. Next slide, please. So those four parcels are the parcels that are sort of district-owned parcels. And as Maureen said, the top three contiguous blocks are the ones that are going to be redeveloped. And the Pyle School block, the intent is that stay as is and stay operational for that program. Next slide, please. So, the first thing we tried to do was understand what community we're in. So we took tours, walks around the area, and kind of discerned that to the west side, it's more commercial, and park is kind of dominates that end of things. But pretty much all the other faces of this site it's a neighborhood. It's a very established neighborhood, and small homes with some large church structures and important church structures that are kind of wrap around that. So the idea here is to try to be respectful of not only the larger community, but who's actually facing these properties as this project moves forward. Next slide, please. So this just sort of summarizes that in a big way, really what the context of the neighborhood as we understand it. Next slide, please.
So we wanted to share with you before we go into the building footprint and kind of where we are with the building plan, some very key elements that have evolved through the discussions to date. That large block that you see there in the center, sorry, let me get my pointer here. This area here that we're looking at are the two parcels, Bancroft School here in this area. So the two parcels that we're looking at where Drew is located and there's parking and then the current fields, those are the two contiguous parcels that we're looking at to having one building to serve all of the students, elementary and middle combined. Now, to do that, we just wanted to point out, we're looking at having a portion of Pine Street closed just between 6th and 7th Streets so that we can have one contiguous building. We didn't want students to be crossing a street or having to, for security reasons, leave the building to go to another part that was shared. So that was a big driver as we were moving forward. We also realized the circulation around the school needed to be addressed. So, and looking at changing the direction of 6th Street from going east to changing it to going west. And we are also looking at the Lombard Street having a two-way circulation. So what this would do is provide, full access around what would be the new building from all surrounding streets. I wanted to make a note. We've been through discussions with the city, and we've had a traffic study done, and the traffic supports this. We don't have any issues. We wanted to make sure that this wouldn't adversely affect any of the surrounding traffic, and that has been confirmed that this is a viable option.
One other thing about the site and the need for two parcels is what the programs show to build the kind of school that this school is going to grow into, and as the governor said, hopefully grows beyond that, is a much larger full school than actually would fit in this building. It would not fit at all in this building or surrounding sites. So it's got to be larger. So rather than going up, it was decided that it was more advantageous, specifically from an educational point of view, to actually expand over two sites. And when you're going to see when we're expanding on those two sites, we don't want to go all the way to the actual property line and have no green space and be right up against the sidewalks, to pull in a little bit, to be a little more of a friendly neighbor, we hope, to the surrounding community.
Next slide, please. So we wanted to just overlay. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, just to know, do you want us to wait until after the presentation to ask questions, or as you want along? I don't know how many slides you have, but I'm just trying to find out.
Sure. We're getting close to the end, so I think we were going to try and hold all the questions to the end, if that's okay. Okay.
And we can come back to look at the drawings if we need to, if you need to reference something.
Absolutely. Yep. We'll have these for reference. Yep. Thank you. So we just wanted to show, again, in looking at those two parcels, between Lombard and Spruce and 6th and 7th, that's the building footprint that we're looking at. As Carl said, we have to be careful. We can't spread too far out. And we also want to look at the massing and not have, go up too much either. So this is, again, showing that general footprint with the change in circulation. And again, in this location, the new facility would be directly across from the park, which we think is a nice benefit as well. Next slide, please. So in looking at the building footprint, again, with this area of Pine being closed, we're looking at looking at having a more central secure entry. That kind of helped us lay out the footprint of the building. So we're looking at an entry here to the center of the building. And what you're seeing to the left would be a two-story academic portion. So that would be for the elementary school and the middle school. And then to the right here are all of the public spaces. So that's a 1.5-story portion of the building that would house all of the, you've got gymnasium, the auditorium and music programs, the cafeteria and kitchen, and a lot of the supporting spaces that could be shared between elementary and middle school. For the elementary school wing, we just wanted to highlight that, we're looking at having an internal courtyard. That was another big discussion point as we went through the meetings, that we have an interior area for the students. Very easy, they don't have to cross the street or leave, the school grounds to be able to have recess. So that was another key driver. And then looking at having that connection with the cafeteria to have some outdoor dining in that space as well. One thing I wanted to note, again, another big component of this, of the discussions were all of the services, the parent drop-off, the bus drop-off and pickup are all occurring on the street. There's really no pull-off area within the space. So as Carl had said, we didn't want to take the building, curb to curb. We wanted to make sure that there was room for some of those components to start to come inward to relieve the streets. So you'll see by the front main entrance here, we have a parent drop-off so that you can come off of 7th, stack and drop off, and then continue on. And then likewise, separating parent drop-off from bus drop-off, we have again another drop-off off of 6th Street for buses so that they can offload into the cafeteria area and then into the school. So those are two very big components that would be a huge improvement from the current sequencing that you have now. And one last thing to point, so this dash line, which is still very conceptual as far as the footprint of it, but again, we talked about parking. Staff parking is a big factor here, and to be able to accommodate the needs and not impact the surrounding neighbors, we're trying to have that basically on the site. So we're looking at a portion of underground parking to be able to provide staff parking, as well as there will still be above ground parking in this zone, and certainly for visitors and handicap parking, but a larger portion of it would be an underground area. Next slide, please. So with the elementary school being predominantly on the first floor, we have the middle school wing here on the 2nd floor, and then related arts that are more specific to the middle school. So important, again, a lot of the discussions we're having some programs that the students could take into their high school. So ag programs and looking at a rooftop garden that could overlook the courtyard, business, STEM. So a lot of the programs we wanted to be able to integrate into the building, program. And then having a central library that could support the entire school and art. So really it's the full round of all of the needs for the entire elementary and middle school students. Next slide, please. And Carl's going to talk to the building massing here.
So I wanted to be clear that the stuff that you're seeing here is really the very first level of plans that really have been developed. It's moving. This is not a done deal by any means, and even the diagram that you're seeing here is very conceptual. It's just to give an idea of kind of the massing of the building. So, and that's why we're here today, is we're trying to get input. We don't have an idea what this thing is really going to look like or how it's going to finally pan out. We've met with a lot of people to date, but this is a really critical point right now, is to get, you're going to be living as the neighbors, as a community, you're going to be living with this for 50 years and more. So we're trying to get feedback so that we can, as we move forward, we design it what makes sense. And so this is not a full version of this, but this is just a concept, as if you're flying above kind of the northwest corner. In the foreground, the thing that looks like a ball field or a football field is actually where this building is standing now. Once the new building is built across the street, it will allow for additional parking and play fields of some sort. The strong desire of the district and Bancroft was, all the other schools in the city and in the state that have elementary and middle school have a play field, a ball field that they can play. So they requested a close to full size football, soccer, and lacrosse, and all those other things too. So it would be for community use and school use. There's other green space that's going to exist on this parcel as well. And what you're seeing is, as Maureen showed in the plan, to the Compton Park side is where the educational wing would be. So you're seeing a 2-story elementary lower and then middle school above and an interior courtyard. It would probably be more paved courtyard. And again, that's for functional purposes for the school, but also to allow light into the classrooms that are on sort of the inboard side, which is something that's extremely lacking at this building. There's significant amount of classrooms that just don't have any natural light. And that's a really important thing that everybody really expressed. And then on the back side are the more communal spaces, gym, cafeteria, auditorium space that will have a more public use as well and be a little bit lower since they're basically a story and a half rather than 2 stories. The underground parking is really intended to be not very visible. It's going to be tried to tuck under at that end of the site because actually the site really slopes about 8 feet from the northwest corner to the southeast corner, as you probably know. And again, trying to pull back the site, actually, could you, okay, trying to pull back the site away from the edge of the street. So there's landscaping, trees, it really feels like more a green space as much as we can try to do there. The next slide, please. So again, the expression of the building, what this building looks like, again, we haven't even got there yet. So we wanted to show some images of some other schools that we've worked on, our team has worked on, and some other schools in general to get at least some initial feedback so that the next time we come to you, we can start showing what the building really could feel like as well. And you saw a massing block, but this could go a lot of different ways. It could go a very traditional way. The bottom left is Howard High School, which was recently renovated, which is a very traditional looking school. It could be something that looks like that. The one in the top center is actually LeBron James School in Ohio. It's a relatively new school. It's a state-of-the-art school that we kept hearing like we want to model this school like that, have all the amenities. But they chose to be actually a more traditional school. It looks like an older school. And we could do the same thing with this project as well. To the top left and the bottom right, it could be a very contemporary looking school. It could look very much modern. So that's a completely valid option. And it could take that note. And then the one on the top right is the school that our team worked on. It's in Dover. It's for Dover High School, and that's kind of an in-between kind of view. It looks kind of contemporary, but actually has a feel of a lot more of a traditional school. So, it's in your community. We'd really like to get, your ideas too of what level of taste that you think that would fit within the community here. And I think if we can do that maybe during the Q&A section, it might be good to come back to that, Dr. Shelton, that part of it.
If you want to wait till that.
Yeah, I think that might be.
Okay.
Okay. Next slide, please. Next slide. Or do you want to do it now? Okay.
Oh, and it's that.
Yeah.
So Bob, why don't you go back to that slide? Let's just start with that. So I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. Let's do our interactive input first, though, while we're at this point. Bob, can you go back to the slide with the 3 or with the 5 images? All right, so we have 5 images. The one in the bottom left and the one in the middle at the top are considered like more traditional. For those of you at home, that's a 1. The one in the top left and lower right, those are like more modern, right? So for those of you at home, that would be 3. And then in the upper right, Dover High School, that's kind of an in-between, right? So the question is, what is your feeling. Again, we're not going to take a vote and figure out, we just want to try to get an idea of where people are kind of setting. So if you're at home, 1 would be more modern, 2 would be kind of in between. I'm sorry, 1 would be more traditional, I apologize. 1 would be more traditional, 2 would be in between, and a 3 would be modern. So you guys can put that in the chat, and we'll pick that up out of the chat. And for those in the audience, I'm just going to kind of go through and just a quick raise it up. Okay, so just a quick show of hands. How many people think we should stay more traditional? The 1. Who thinks we should be a little bit more traditional? Okay. How about more in the middle? More little modern, little traditional, okay, hands down. And how many people think we should go with a modern building? So the beauty of this little test is that it is pretty much balanced across the board. But thank you for that. We'll see what our ladies and gentlemen from home come. Yes. Absolutely. I just want to make one little quickie because Representative Colcha is here. Thank you very much for coming this evening. And we didn't get to announce you earlier. Go ahead.
Yes, so thank you for the presentation. My question is, are there any requirements in terms of this area being historic? So when you look at this particular community, there are sections that are considered historical. Thank you. And I'm wondering, have we considered that? Because if you put a contemporary building in the midst of a historic neighborhood, aesthetically, that would not look good. But I guess my fundamental question is, have we already confirmed if there are some regulations that we have to adhere to as it relates to it being contemporary or it being a traditional looking building?
So I'll say 2 things to that. First of all, we have a couple members of the city here that we've been working with a lot. And thank you for all the work that you guys have done to help us out. Our partnership with the city so far has been absolutely amazing. And thanks. So they're helping us. We literally meet with them every week. So every step of the way, as we've gone through and brought input and at different layers of this, they've absolutely had input. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that point specific.
And to the historic, yes, there is an overlay zone on this. I believe it's the St. Mary's Historic District. So we're part of that. We have to respond to that. I don't believe there are specific guidelines, but it has to go through the historic review process. So they, in essence, need input, and again, the community can be part of that process of giving their input to the historic committee, and they will respond to what we come forward with you. So we're not there yet. There'll be a lot of renditions of what this building looks like, but I think from your comment, I think that's important that it fit within the community context.
Thank you. So my follow-up would be, I think that we should get the feedback as it relates to what is permissible and what is not before we get people's feedback and input in terms of what they like. So in other words, if there's only 3 schools up there that are permissible, then I think those are the ones that we want to share with the community. I just don't want us to share any false promises and individuals start thinking about, should it look like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we find out, oh, by the way, we have to adhere to certain regulations. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. Sure. I own property in the area, and I know that those are questions and those are considerations that always come to the table.
Sure. And I think, and thank you, very good comment. And also, we probably misspoke because this is just sort of also what the exterior looks like. The inside of the school will be a very modern, state-of-the-art. I mean, it's going to be a wow kind of school for the kids once you move inside. But when you get to the outside face, again, you've got to be a good neighbor. So we need to straddle that line. And yes, we'll be working with that. And your comment's a good one that, don't show an image that probably could never even be allowed to be done. So I think we'd steer away from that really contemporary one anyway, but we'll be conscious of that. So thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
I'm just going to ask the same questions I asked during the meeting that some residents from the east side asked me to ask. I see a lot of individuals here making decisions for our youth who do not look like our youth. That was one that was stated, and I stated that on the meeting. Another point that was made was Tizzy and Stephanie, representatives. This building is not just history for Black people. It's a lot of minority, white people who went to this school, and it's very historic to a lot of people. So they want y'all to remember that during elections. I'm just reading off the questions. Secondly, what is the benefit of a new building to this community? What is the benefit to the community to have a new building?
So I'm going to start with the third because I don't remember the first anymore.
Okay.
So benefit to the community. We're going to have a brand new state-of-the-art school. Right now, we have a building that doesn't have what our students need. It was originally designed, I think, in the 20s. It was a junior high. It became an elementary school for quite a few years, and a lot of changes happened during that period of time. And now it's an elementary and a middle school. Circulation-wise, because you have a lot of big areas on the first floor, a lot of the academics are pushed up, which means you have kids that have to climb up and down stairs, which is not optimal for elementary school students. We also don't have the ability to bring in modern CTE labs because you need large spaces. There's just no way to kind of fit that into this building. The additional thing is right now, when our kids want to go out to play, they got to cross the street to get to the playground. Obviously, whatever we can do to make the circulation, safety, and security of a building envelope for our students is what's going to be great. Not only that, but when you have a modern, state-of-the-art school, you're going to get a lot of pride in that school. And we have seen that anywhere where we bring in new buildings. And I'm really looking forward to bringing something like that here to the east side.
Thank you. These are just the questions that I want to say in front of everybody so they can understand that I did ask the same questions during the board meeting, and I want to just make sure I'm reiterating the questions. Next, how it was revitalized, and what is the cost to revitalize this building? We just keep hearing it costs a lot to repair it. What is the cost? We never heard the amount of the cost of repairing the building.
I think that one thing that came about after it was decided to build the new school is we went
After
through.
y'all decided, or whoever.
Well, I think there was, I think the
governor,
Reading
whoever.
Commissioner and the governor's. You want to take that one?
Looking at John, we made a decision working with the district at the time to pursue a brand new school because the cost of renovation was in the same order of magnitude. And if John remembers exactly, then
30 to 40, that 30 to 40, and now we're talking 70, that's not in the same, that's not the same. I was just saying 30 to 40 is not 70 to 75.
So
yeah, that wasn't the comparison.
Okay, so that's a big difference.
George is going to answer that a little bit more.
Right,
It was in the high 40s to renovate this building, approaching 50 million. And at the time when we did the estimate for a new building, before inflation, before COVID, it was around 55 million. So when you're figuring which is the better option, the new school was the better option there. Also with the availability to do 21st century learning models, which this building really doesn't allow us to do.
And just one thing about that number was from several years ago. A couple things that have changed, and Mr. Wicks mentioned it, was the cost escalation that's happened since that was done has been significant. Just general escalation, and also COVID, as you might know, has really wreaked havoc with all project budgets. So thankfully, the governor and the people working with the governor have realized that and have supported giving additional money. Additionally,
And the reality is that those original estimates were way too low.
Yeah.
And in fact, it held us back because we had to wait until we actually had money available in the state, like we did this year, to get the funding. That was kind of the process that we went through. We're a couple, frankly, I wish we had broken ground 2 years ago on this project, to be honest with you, but all these things got in the way.
So I just want to be clear about that. High 40 number is not relevant, or it's relevant, but it's probably not accurate at this point. To renovate this building would be higher. Also, that what's happened in intermediate time is we went through that needs assessment with the faculty here and realized they need more space than actually is in this building. So then you are building, whether it's additions or expansions or going across the street or whatever, to get what they really feel they need. It is a larger building too, hence the need for the additional dollars.
Okay.
Sorry to
Lance,
go on.
Ms. Kirkland stated that we had to fight to come to Bancroft. Now we have to fight to try to keep Bancroft. And one other statement that was made was when it's historical to us in our minority community, it's okay to tear it down, but when it's historical in your community, it's not okay. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Where'd I put mine? I can keep going.
Hello. I would like to ask you how much input you got from the actual community that lives around the school. If you had gotten and reached out to folks that lived in the community, one of our concerns would be, what about across the street? People settlement. How can you do something on this magnitude and you just ignore people settlement? That's number one. Number two is that if you're going to build this new school, and if you look at the surrounding community with the blight and everything, is there going to be a component to take care of that? We always talk about the children having to walk out of the school and look at everything in the community that's negative. So that's what we'd like to ask you about. But people's settlement, for sure. Are you going to ignore people's settlement? Or are you going to do something about people's settlement?
So great questions. Number one, we did think about people settlement as being part of this. Actually looking at the whole area. People settlement, as you probably know, is a separate entity, nonprofit entity, which has a board of its own. In addition to the people settlement, you have a pool that's right adjacent to it. So you have all kinds of opportunities. The point about working with the community, that's why we're here, frankly, tonight, is to hear from the community about what you'd like to see in this project. With respect to redevelopment, before you came in, when I started off, I talked about the fact that the city wants to do just what you're talking about in terms of neighborhoods surrounding the school, because you're exactly right. It has to lift up the whole community, not just the school. Putting in a brand new school without working with surrounding communities, you're not going to be able to maximize the impact. We think we can have an incredible impact, positive impact here on the east side with a new school, with additional investment in the communities. We're thinking about getting people settlement back to being, frankly, an operational entity that's an asset to the community.
So if People Settlement has a rogue board, and they are resistant to change and things, I mean, how can you help us in the community?
Yeah, that's a little bit out of my league,
Settlement
to be honest with you. I know it's a concern of city officials. We can certainly have that conversation. We've had the conversation with the mayor's office. You know, it is a challenging thing because they are a separate and private entity.
Well, hello. My name is Joanne Gatewood, and this brings me memories. I went to school here, and I just, I miss being in here. I think of all the performances that we did. This was a place of love, the school here. So I didn't even know about this, a new development here. And I live on Knights and Lombard, so I don't know who was supposed to get the information to the community, but it didn't come to me like that, or us. We all live right around this area. Henrietta Johnson is right across the street. So how would this impact our health center that's right here in our neighborhood?
So one of the big program components that we talked about very early on is a wellness center. So there would be a wellness center component. Henrietta Johnson, we spoke with those folks and got their needs, and those are incorporated into this new plan. So, and they weren't just the only one. We know that there's a lot of community resources, whether it be, pantry, food, clothing, in addition to the wellness, that is to be, it's part of the program of this building, and it has that access.
Well, I work at the community education building, and they built this, rehab, this big, beautiful building, and it doesn't, our kids are still failing. We have trauma-enforced kids in our neighborhood, and we're traumatized from all the crime and everything. Housing is a big issue. So nothing changes to have a new building if you're not helping to heal what's in our community. So that's a big issue for me. And whenever we've had development, the stuff around development comes in our neighborhood, okay? So when the riverfront got developed, we got raccoons that walk down the street, look like people. We got possums, we got everything in our neighborhood. And no one ever thought about the surrounding areas where we live. And if this building is something that is going to happen, did you guys think about solar energy of any kind to save and stuff? I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Hi. I'm not, I don't have anything to say about the way that you developed the building and that, because it sounds good in terms of architectural design and all that kind of stuff. Okay. My concern is that a building is not a school. And this is Christina School District, this is Bancroft School, that's Stubbs, and this goes to you. I think that along with the building of this brand new school, we got to build brand new children in terms of reading and math and that kind of thing. We did the same thing with so-called desegregation of schools. We moved kids into buildings and said, you're going to learn. Bull crap. And I'm old enough now to say anything that I want to say, and I'm not trying to hurt it, and the governor knows that I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but to me, nobody has addressed the needs of Christina School District and this school in particular in terms of learning. That's what a school is about.
No, look, BB's exactly right, but it has to start with showing your children that you care about them. And you care about them, you show your children that you care about them, you show the community that you care about them with the facilities that you provide for them. And so, that's exactly what I said we intended to do with the gentleman that was sitting behind you. One of the proudest moments, the proudest moment, frankly, of my tenure as your governor was when we signed the bill just a week or two ago to create the Opportunity Funding Program. And essentially that's money that goes to schools with children from disadvantaged backgrounds and English learners. These are additional resources to BB do exactly what you and I would want to see done for our children. But you're right, that's the most important thing. But somebody mentioned it with respect to the trauma that the children in the communities experience. It has to be a full-on arm wrap around these children. And we do that in a school with the kinds of facilities that this will provide and working with the surrounding neighborhood and creating assets like People Settlement used to be and could be in the future.
So I'd like to introduce Dr. Deirdre Akins. She's the Deputy Superintendent, and she's also our Chief Academic Officer. And she's going to address a couple, because both of you had something that was in kind of similar vein, and we're going to have her address that.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. So what I'd like to do is just highlight some of the things that we're doing in our schools to address some of the concerns that you raised here today. So we're creating care teams in our buildings, and I do get that a building does not make things better, right? Just like a house doesn't become a home until you put what you need to put in it. And so the care teams on the ground, every school's going to have a social worker. Every school's having counselors, multiple counselors, actually. We are getting that real training. Sure, but there has been trauma-informed training in our schools already. But we really need to show our teachers and our staff how to respond to what they're getting when kids come into school. We also have to learn how to wrap our arms around the kids when they get here and about triaging what they need and then supporting them. Then referring for outreach and support whenever we can. So along with our social workers, our counselors, and other care teams on the ground, we're also adopting a new reading curriculum. We have instructional coaches and multiple in our buildings. We are looking at this high quality instructional materials and the adults to support that. I'm working with our community, Mrs. Kabibi Coker and Dr. Grantham and other folks about getting that community input about what our kids need. We also have a great math curriculum that's in year 3 and is already showing results. We are also bringing in the Harvard Graduate School of Education to do data-wise work with the 3 schools in the city about teaching our teachers how to look at data, become consumers of that data, and make it turn around and see action. So that's a lot of high-level stuff right there, but I'm happy to speak to anyone who would love any details or input or even participate in any of the community opportunities I have for you to help us in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And you can reach me from the school website.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eunice Lafayette, and my question relates to the arts, the visual, the performing, and all forms of arts, because I know the power of the arts. And when you talk about the children who come to this school, the children who are in the area, I know the influence of the arts. So I would love to see a little theater someplace. In terms of the design, how is that design going to support the arts? Because studies show that children who are involved in the arts are less likely to be involved in destructive and criminal behaviors. It is proven. I myself have lived here for 38 years. I converted my basement as a safe haven back in the 90s when my son was growing up on this east side. I told him, bring all your friends to the basement during those long summers. We had a podium, we had everything there, drums, maracas, they wrote, they rapped, etc., etc. Long and short of the story, success. All the children who were involved, and I did a documentary titled Arts as Prevention. All the children who were involved in my arts program in my basement, graduated from high school, from college, and are leading productive lives. One of them is making 6 figures. So what I'm trying to say, within the structure of the building and the curriculum, I would hope that the arts play a vital role.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the most exciting parts of when we were meeting with the faculty. The arts faculty that they have are unbelievable. I mean, the passion that they have for their program was really, but they're very limited in this school what they can do. I mean, you're kind of seeing the extent of it, and they're having to make do. So that was a big component of giving them extra support spaces just during the day. But they really are wanting to take it to a much deeper level with after-school program and integration with other community organizations to really expand just beyond the school district curriculum. So as you start to see the things develop, you're going to see a lot more detail with each one of these things. And that's going to be a big component that we're going to have the ability, a lot more room and ability to kind of make that state of the art as well. So thank you. Representative? Oh, I'm sorry, there's some.
Good evening. Just a couple of things. Number one, in reference to what Ms. Lafayette stated, you had STEM, so you just saying STEAM would help to begin to address that. And then I think it needs to be remembered as we go about whatever happens in the future, that Bancroft was a successful school. I mean, to say that you're making it better or improving it in some ways but let us not forget that it did graduate many people who are very successful. So the community was very successful. And I remember Ms. Street, Ms. Bailey, there were people in this community who got on the principals and they made certain that certain things were happening for the children here. So the community was an involved and concerned community. And one thing that has to happen that hasn't happened with the children, and I was a teacher 40 years, the history has to continue with it. So we need to see that as you move or whatever you do or finalize, what's the connection? Because many of the young children that will be in there, and we know what the trauma they've been through, but where's their connection to the past? And they need to see that. You step in Conrad High School, and they have a showcase of all their past. That means a lot to children. And that's the thing that we're facing now. That's what's missing. Where's our history? And I'm hoping you step into that building, whatever might happen, history should be there. You step in Conrad, have you been to Conrad School? You see the history there? And the community can talk about it, and children can go in there and say that my grandfather, my grandparents, so forth. That, whatever's finalized, I'm hoping you step in there, we want to see the history, because the people in this community were hard workers, and they worked nights. I know my husband, he did not take vacations. There was no such thing, and schools stayed open late, no vacations. And I won't go into all that, but the fact is, they were concerned people, and they did things, and they sent young people to college, as Ms. LaFate was saying. We have a young lady, took math here, she's working for NASA. So they were doing it. Okay, so let's not forget that, think that there was nothing.
Thank you very much. That's a great, great comment, and very important. That came up throughout the discussions that we had with the public, with the staff, with the parents, that we have an opportunity to teach the history. I mean, when somebody walks through the door, they need to understand where you've come from and all of the accomplishments to be able to build the future. And we talked about having some, very highlight areas that, could be memory wall, it could be interactive, it could have a lot of personal stories, but it's really to highlight all of those great stories in the history of where we are today and where it will continue. So, I mean, that, graphic walls, I think that was a huge component that we had talked about, in this early stages. So we absolutely see that as a very big component within this building, for sure. I mean, that's, something that's very, very, in a very public area, so that everybody walks into the building, they can learn from that.
And you mentioned for their kids, but really, this is a community center. I mean, it is now, and it's even going to be more so in this new facility. This is, half of what we were talking about was that, this has community impact and making it easy for the community to use the space and interact with the space. So I think that's more everybody that should be able to, will be able to see those things. And it's a great comment. Thank you.
Oh.
Yes. Sure.
Thank you very much. A lot of the information I have definitely has come from the community. Earlier, you had mentioned that a lot of the designs that you shared earlier with the one building where everything is, all the functional activities are going to be in one building. Well, I was asked to confirm that there was discussion about this being a careers development will be in this particular building. Solar panels, will be included.
Yeah, that was one of the things, was looking at sustainable energy, not necessarily just solar, but looking at a lot of different renewable and sustainable components within the building, whether it be materials or, just infrastructure. Absolutely.
Gardening.
Yep.
Okay, multi-purpose room.
Yep.
A swimming pool or swimming pool lessons.
There is no, right now, we are on a pretty thin budget trying to make it because of the skyrocketing cost of construction. I don't think addition of pool is going to make the cut.
Okay, and I can understand that. Okay. Okay. And I'm just asking these questions because it came to me to bring to the meeting tonight.
It did. That was absolutely part of the public, when we were talking with the public. I
Right.
remember hearing the pool, a few times.
Okay, and real quick, the educational resources for all students, the state-of-the-art virtual media center,
Yes,
the parent room smart boards,
yes, yes,
childcare needs,
yes.
community center, you just spoke to that.
Childcare resources, yep,
Okay, the wellness center,
yes,
the laundromat,
yes.
okay, and lastly, there is a strong demand to preserve Bancroft, and if there's this particular building, and if there is any way possible to preserve this building and perhaps maybe use the building, the administration, where the administration, is that Drew Pyle?
Drew.
Okay,
Drew, yep.
Okay, so I just wanted to share that there is a strong demand to preserve this building and perhaps use that building as it relates to the new Bancroft. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I say something?
So we do have a few that they came in the chat that I just want to hit. There was in the Q&A, there was a question that the interior courtyard play space seems like a great idea. Do you think the noise from recess might affect learning in the classrooms, as they'll have windows entering in there?
Yeah, so actually, it's pretty common to have play areas right outside of classrooms. The types of window, not only are they give a thermal separation, they do get somewhat of a sound separation, but it is an elementary school. You will hear kids playing. Hopefully, a lot of time when the kids are playing, they're not in the classrooms, but that's pretty common in really most school. I think, people are willing to live with it.
The playground's usually outside of some class.
Some
Correct,
classroom
correct.
somewhere, so, yeah.
So let me just go through these and then we'll come back through. You can, if you get your mic, to the next person. There was another one. Sorry, I had it up and then another one went in there and it moved. It was asking if it's going to be green, if it's going to be LEED, is it going to have a green roof?
So we're not, having a LEED certified building is a whole different level, and there's a lot of costs that are associated with that. And we're not really targeting this as a LEED building. That being said, there's a lot of sustainable practices that we integrate in buildings all day long that don't go for LEED certification. So there's just a lot, from everything from mechanical to plumbing to lighting to materials. There are so many aspects of the building that can be made sustainable without going for LEED certification. So it's much more common practice now than when it first started. So absolutely, those are aspects and components that we build into the building just to be good, stewards of the environment. So absolutely.
And we were looking at green roof areas. That's not official if that's going to be in there or not.
Right.
That's a real budget issue. Budget driver as well.
So the last one, and I was looking for somebody in particular to answer this question, was who's going to attend the school? And I've heard that question a couple times before. So the current Bancroft School is the east side of Wilmington for first through 8th grade. Currently, both east side and west side for kindergarten and first grade go to Stubbs. Then the west side goes to Bayard for 1 to 8, and the east side goes to Bancroft for 1 to 8 in the Christina School District. That will be the attendance. Now, will others come? The governor was saying, well, hopefully more people are going to want to come to this new school, but that's the feeder. Those are the children that will be assigned to Bancroft. All right, and somebody has the mic.
Yes,
Mr.
first of all, I want to commend the committee that's here tonight, the governor, for giving us an opportunity to dialogue about where we are and where we're going. And I'm particularly happy to see so many of our political advocates who I look up to are doing a great job. So it's very interesting to put 30-some years into a building And I'm sitting here listening at so many things that have been said. And I think my wife hit on something that brought the charge back to me, and that is history. And for those of you who don't know it, or maybe you do, this school, Bancroft High School, that's what this was. You couldn't go to school here. We lived in the Black community. We couldn't go here. We couldn't go, all this was playground where you're standing. And we would go play basketball on the playground. The principal would come out and tell you to get away. And this went on for years. But in any event, we ended up with number 21, number 29, number 5. That's what we had to go through. So I'm saying, you think about this, a lot of people in the city of Wilmington, those who are still living, they went through that. And then when we started to get involved with the Wilmington Public Schools, who ended up getting the short end of the stick was Bancroft. They remodeled Bayard. They remodeled Warner. And that's why those schools are in such good shape. People always ask me, how come they end up with all those brick buildings? They look so good. Well, they got everything given to them. We didn't get it. We end up, eventually, that's why that playground's out there. They gave us that. They built, this was not here, auditorium. You end up getting the cafeteria. We got a gym. We had the art rooms. We had the science labs. We were dissecting cats once we got in there. We went through all of that. So we're some heavy sisters and brothers in this school. I want to make that known. And even though we were not allowed to go here, we couldn't even go to the People's Settlement. They had a pool right across the street. We weren't allowed in there. But we were right in the neighborhood growing up, riding our bikes. So it's history. And I think the parents deserve a real understanding that, all of the individuals that are in here who fought to make this thing better. I'm not opposed to a lot of things. But what I am saying is, don't forget your past. These young people need to understand what these parents went through. We had these great artists, musicians. We had doctors. Guys, I witnessed with their doctors. They're retired now, but we all came through this. And it was like, we stayed on point. So I commend this opportunity to be here, but there are a lot of people in here who are saying things that it means a lot to them, that they were able to go here, like the young lady mentioned back there. I went here, 7th through 9th grade. We couldn't go to high school. You had to do 6th, 7th, and 8th grade right here. Well, actually, it was 7th through 9th grade. Stayed right here. And then you went to the high school. That's when they started integrating the schools. They couldn't go to school. All of us had to go to one school. But the number of schools kind of forced things. A lot of kids went to Wilmington High, PSU, all that happened. It was my 9th grade year. They think this changed. And now we're making a change again. And I think a couple times the question was asked, who's this going to benefit? That's important, because some of those who are still living, they witness all of what's getting ready to happen. It was bad. Trust me, it was bad. One swimming pool, cruise pool. That's all you could go to. You couldn't go to Price to run the pool. You weren't allowed over there. And that's just the way it was. So, it's important that we understand what we're talking about. You can sit and meet with all the groups you want. The thing is, if you don't know your history about what you're doing, then you we're not getting anywhere. And what you're saying, you are on a mission for making it better. And that's important. It really is. And they need to hear that. They need to understand, your past is not forgotten. But we're making your past now we're going on to your history to another level. And the new generation can do this. Because that's what this is fact. So when we talk about, where the kids are gonna come from, well, one time Bancroft ended up getting all the kids. We went to the state thing of what can you do to draw kids into the city of Wilmington? Well, we put posters and things all down, getting on I-95, superintendent. First, kill them. First was coming in, complaining, man, you're getting all the kids. So I ended up, every year I had 12 kids, white and black. And signs, technology, get it off. And we slept here at night on the weekend. Kids in the city of Wilmington, we slept right here in this auditorium. Watch movies, learn how to read, learn how to be respectful to your teacher. We went through all Mr. Plants, our plants, like all those different people came right here. We fed the kids, next morning we gave them breakfast. It was a family. You know what I'm saying? See, y'all can go and I lived in the root to New York, but I know all the parents. They all came. They couldn't believe. They couldn't believe the trouble the kids to go to school. There's no fighting, no bathroom fights. They love the school. They didn't want to go anywhere. So those things, it's possible. So what you're doing, you're on point. The thing is, now you got to get the reality that we people to believe and where we're going why. This is why we're doing this. So you all showing love to each other.
Thank you. Thank you.
You don't want me to talk at all. Ted wouldn't let me talk either when we was on city council. No, but thank you so much because it was mentioned about the history. I am also the history of Bancroft. When it was a junior high school, I went here sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth grade. When the science room was Mr. Smith, we had Mrs. Harris. We had all the great teachers that taught us here and taught us our history. So in terms of history, Howard High School, I still refer to it as that, had number 29, was where number 29 school used to be that Mr. Pritchett mentioned. That was torn down, and then Howard was put there. The first school that we had was Stubbs, which was built in 1952. And I had the privilege of being one of the, I'm not going to tell you what grade I was in there, but one of the first students to go there when it was built there. So when you look at the time frame that everyone's talking about with the school, we haven't had a school built here in the city of Wilmington in years, but yet we have had schools built other places in the county, well, we just had another Middletown, just got a new high school and middle school or whatever. Well, that's fine, but our schools are starting to crumble and we do need to maintain them and have the history here. So the other thing that Senator Lockman and I just like to indicate, as well as Representative Quocha, the two of us are on Joint Finance Committee and we were able to put money towards the building of the school. We are not here to talk about what needs to go into the school and the history. That's not what we're doing. We are members of the community. I live in the community and still on the east side. And so we are here to listen to whatever the community has because it's a community school, it's your school. I think it's going to give us the opportunity to rebuild our neighborhoods. When we were here, we knew who the kids were. So as they're walking to school, we can hear their names and know who they are, where they live. And then maybe we won't be too afraid to discipline them or also to help them or see where their needs are, because that's what we had when we were kids, when we were school. He's older than me. Okay? I just want to make sure that you know that you know that. And also in history, we were able, through our Justice for All agenda with Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker, to put through the bill which is going to allow African American history be taught in all public schools and charter schools. So they are going to get the history. I'm trying to rush through this because I know everybody wants to have information. and the mental health bill. Right, we're still, we did pass that, so we're just waiting for the governor's approval on that one to sign it. Love you, Governor. Okay, I do. Okay, and, that's basically all I want to say, but it's so good. I look around here, I see all the people I grew up with, I see all the people I went to school with, et cetera, and a neighbor from Poplar Street before we changed it to Clifford Brown Wall. Right. And so we are a family and a community. I think what you're doing here is great. I think this school is going to be the rebuilding of the East Side neighborhood and rebuilding the families and neighborhoods, because that's what we need. We need to be able to have our children where we can see them. And as Representative Dorsey Walker always says, our babies. They'll always be our babies because we are here to be able to give them the information and to protect and help them. We have the knowledge. We were given that by our teachers and our community, our surroundings. So we want to pass that knowledge on. We're not here to just criticize and say what we don't want, but what we need to do to work together to improve what we want to get. So thank you.
I'll be very brief, I promise. I just wanted to express my gratitude for being here. Really enjoyed being able to hear folks' concerns and thoughts. Everything is absolutely valid. I won't repeat some of the items that Representative Bolden went over, but your concerns about the needs of our students that go beyond the physical plan of a building are very, very well taken. Representative Chiquocha and I formed the Reading Consortium with that very much in mind. And we were able to secure some $10 million in resources that are going to be targeted for Wilmington students looking at wraparound services, looking at the social, emotional, and trauma piece, at pre-K and a number of other items, which we're happy to talk about with you more. And you mentioned, the mental health supports that we talked about, the African-American history. So we're very mindful of how much more is needed within the buildings and to support our educators, our students, and our families. And the Reading Consortium, while we didn't specifically call for a new building, are very much supportive of any investment that we can make into our community schools. And also the engagement of the community with deployment of those resources. So I'm hopeful that this is an opening to that, deepening that conversation and making sure that the history is present. And if preservation is something that the community is particularly interested in terms of the building or parts of the building, that we make sure to continue to raise our voices about that so we can have that conversation when it can still be had. So I just wanted to express my gratitude as your senator and pass the mic. I don't know if, okay, Representative Chiquocha. Thank you.
Just quickly, just wanted to say one thing. First of all, thank everyone for being here. This is really what we need, how we get that level of engagement. But one point for me that stands out, thinking of redoing schools and investing, I represent Brandywine School District, North Wilmington, and Mr. Pritchett and so many others mentioned PS School. And there was a whole bunch of money. I want to say it was 24 million when millions were really millions. And the only thing was that all of that money went into the school, but it didn't really connect back to the community where we felt that PS was our school again. And I'm just hoping that with this project, I know there's a lot of talk of that community connection, having the communities in the schools. I was fortunate with Senator Lockman to visit the LeBron James school that they showed. And it truly is a community center inside of a school with the resources and the supports. Those are the type programs that we need. And I know Dr. Shelton truly understands where we're headed, and Ms. Akins, Dr. Akins understands where we're headed and having that connection between the school and the community. So again, thankful for everyone. I thank the board, the district themselves for just listening to the community, because again, when the renovations were done in my community school, we didn't have the same type of engagement. So it's good to see it here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Jones Avery, and I'm representing the Wilmington Center for Education, Equity, and Policy. Most importantly, I'm representing my father, Valley Rice, who taught mathematics here for 25 years. He taught some of you. And my children are proud graduates of Bancroft under Mr. Pritchett and Ms. Pritchett's tutelage. They're successful, good human beings. So my question is this. And that's not the only question that I have, but I don't want to be redundant. And of course, we know our children and our families and our community, we deserve the best. And so that is our expectation. My question is there a community benefits agreement under development or developed regarding procurement, contracting, goods and services? Because this is an economic development project as well. So that's my question.
We have some representatives of the contracting team that's been working heavily on just that question.
So my name's Frank Lero from Whiting Turner Contracting. We're the construction manager for the new Bancroft School. And just at the last school board meeting, we presented our preliminary diversity and inclusion plan, where we went over the regulations that the state has in place, for all public works projects, schools, other public buildings that we do have to follow. There are opportunities to break this job down into smaller packages, we call them bid packages, to engage and give more opportunity to minority-owned businesses, small businesses in Wilmington, local businesses. So, we are actively pursuing that and developing that plan with Dr. Shelton's team and with the school board. We understand it is a very crucial component of the project's success to try to keep as much of the economic development in the community. So we are actively building that plan, and we're going to have continuous updates with the school board as that plan develops and we get into procurement probably in the first quarter of next year.
Thank you. So when will that plan be available for review?
Probably over the next 2 to 3 months, we'll finalize that. We've had conversations already. Today, I spoke with the City of Wilmington Economic Development Office, with their diversity inclusion program, how we can, model that program for this project. So it is actively ongoing. So it'll be in the next 2 to 3 months where we'll have a finalized approach. I think, and one of the other pieces to that, is really keeping the local contractor community up to speed with the information of the project. Just saying, yeah, it's gonna be out to bid next year. No, we're gonna have similar open houses like this with the contracting community locally to say, here's our approach. Here's how the job is going to be procured. These are the bid packages. This is what you have to do to follow the state regulations. So we're going to have these information sessions to show them and educate them as we need to of how the state processes work and how they can be involved in the bidding and hopefully be successful on some of these packages.
Thank you. We look forward to reviewing and seeing that information. I do have one other question for the governor. Governor, how are you? Long time no see.
I don't know. If you want to ask your question, I'll tell you how I'm doing.
So this is my question. And if you need to answer it later, and it's not just my question. So we know that we have had long talks that are active around redistricting. So my question is, who owns the assets?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The answer is it's the Christina School District, right? So let me just share with you my thinking, our thinking, you and I, you're right, we've talked about this. So obviously leading up to the election where I was elected governor, there was a lot of discussion around what to do with the schools in the city of Wilmington. And there was a plan developed by a group called WIC. I think you were a member of that, if not an advocate around it. Wilmington Education Improvement Commission, I think it was called. So they recommended to move the Christina School District out of the city of Wilmington and to move all those children that Dr. Shelton was talking about into the Red Clay School District. That was approved by the Christina, somebody needs to correct me if I get this wrong, it was approved by the Christina School District, as I recall, ultimately not approved by the Red Clay School District Board. And one of the major reasons was the feeling that the buildings were undercapitalized. They would need a lot of resources. There weren't additional educational resources. We've all talked about the most important thing is what are you doing with the children and how are you helping them learn? And so I was presented with that as I came in as governor. I met with all the superintendents at the time. Dan, they're all gone now. Dan, Dr. Shelton was at Dover at the time. All the other district superintendents have moved on to other things. Darrell Green, who's now the superintendent over at Red Clay, came to work for us on our program, really focused on what were we going to do to move the needle for the children in the city of Wilmington and other children from disadvantaged backgrounds across our state, who we knew were not doing as well as they needed to do. We needed to do a much better job. And so that's why we started in the first year. So Dr. Bunting, I mentioned this at the outset, she did an assessment with Darrell of the schools in all the city, across the districts. We made a determination to roll up our sleeves and really go to work with the Christina schools in the city, in particular because that was part of the WIAC move or recommendation, right? And we thought it would be better ultimately if we could get a community-wide support for that kind of movement, that it'd be easier to accomplish if your buildings were recapitalized, if you had a new building here, if the what was happening in the classrooms was really exciting. And so we committed to do that, to really do something. Because I didn't see, as I talked to the superintendents, and we had board members that were part of that discussion, nobody was really interested and excited about my theory was, let's move Christina out and just distribute those children among the 3 remaining districts. Well, I couldn't convince folks to do that. So we said, we're going to roll. Kids are moving from one grade to the next every day while we dither and talk about it. They're moving through. So I'm 4 years governor. Children have gone from first grade to 5th grade already. That's why I'm frustrated that it's taken us so long to get here with this particular project, and there are reasons for that. So we believe that our approach to recapitalizing the buildings in Christina School District and rolling up our sleeve, working with educators, improving what's happening in the classroom, will make whatever decision the Reading Commission comes up with a recommendation easier for all of us to accept. I would love nothing more than for children to come in and say, well, I want to choose to send my children to the new Bancroft or to the, maybe we can name it after this gentleman right here, the new school. So I don't know if that is an answer to your question, but the whole idea of this investment is with all the children in the city of Wilmington in mind in terms of where do we go from here in terms of the next step. It in my mind, sets it up in a way to make a thoughtful decision about how to do the best thing by our children. Because it's the most important thing that we do, and it's so critically important. You look at the challenges that we face. They go back to what we're not doing, what the failures with these children. And our educators work so hard in doing it, but we've got to get better support and better facilities, frankly, to achieve the goal. About what? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tony Watts, but most people say I'm Logan Herring's mother, and I am. And I'm very proud of what my son is doing in the community over at Riverside, but he's looking at the whole thing. Like he's looking at the housing, he's looking at schools, he's looking at the healthcare, he's looking at everything. Can we do more of that, not just building a school here, but also our communities, because communities are failing. Even though we have kids that will come to this school, but they're going home and they're failing because their homes, the situation in which they live is not good. So the same energy that we have in putting schools up, can we also work in changing our community and bettering their homes?
Absolutely, and that's the overall objective. And what Logan's doing is exactly the model. It's a holistic model. And we were also able to get significant investment to support the great work that they're doing out there in the Northeast.
Good evening. This question may have been asked and answered, but I missed it. Who is the school for? Like, I'm interested in the children in this neighborhood surrounding this building attending this school, and I find it hard to believe that you just want to drop $70 million on the east side. I'm sorry.
So the question was asked earlier, and I was looking for Ms. Greenfield earlier. This is the principal of the school. She's going to talk about her kids.
Wow, what a pleasure. And I wasn't expecting this. Hi. So I'll take the other side of the bike. As Mr. Pritchett is a mentor to me. So as he talks about the families and being a family, that is really what we're trying to build here. The students at Bancroft come from Southbridge. So we made sure we brought resources from Southbridge to support our Southbridge families. Our students from Bancroft pretty much surround the school, all the way down to Stubbs. So we work directly. We're the big brothers and big sisters of the babies at Stubbs. Our students, while they have a lot of needs, we have worked very, very hard to build up a compassionate school since we started. And I don't know how many of you know, but we won first runner-up for the Compassionate School Award from the governor. So we've been working really hard to train our staff, build a common language around self-care and being equipped to come in and serve our babies, the whole child. So we have first graders through eighth graders. We know them all by name. And you know, the benefit to me is that I came from Bayard. So I spent 4 years as an assistant principal at Bayard, and I know a lot of the brothers and sisters of the children I have now. So I see parents that I was able to build relationships with at Bayard. And then I spent a year at Palmer. So I was able to really love on that community and bring that here. But our students are talented. They're very much interested in the performing arts and the visual arts. We have an art teacher who really stepped outside of the box for the first time in just a few years, and really kind of showcased our students within the city. And she entered them into arts programs and different things and contests. And, you know, we won some things. We have students who are interested in drumline. So we're working on getting grants. Miss Eller, one of our fabulous, she's like our fundraising superstar of the century. You know, every time she comes and asks, and we have a lot of people who just love on us. Mr. Pritchett, Miss Pritchett. We got a phone call from Matt Meyer. I mean, we just have so many people who love on us. But one of the things that we talked about was investing money in drums, so we can continue that love of drumline that came from the students at Palmer. The arts, we're doing coding. Our kids are loving it. We have our learning pods at Hicks Anderson, at the neighborhood house. Excuse me, I'm excited and nervous at the same time. But we did a lot of coding at those locations. over the pandemic. And Mr. Pritchett, I wasn't able to be there because my husband hurt his knee. You know how that is, right? But they had a huge celebration at the waterfall for our students, and they felt really special. But they want to do the STEM, the STEAM, the performing arts. They want to get their hands dirty. They want that garden, that rooftop garden. They want that. We've talked to Eugene Young about doing an urban garden project. So, I mean, like I said, we've been working really hard over the last 2 years to really get to know what our babies want and what they need. We have the social emotional side, you know, where we're really trying to help them self-regulate, you know, and we're trying to train our teachers how to deal with students who are in crisis, because we don't say our kids are bad. We say that our kids are in crisis. I talked to Tizzy last year. She said, "What's going on?" I said, "We just have kids who are in crisis, and we're dealing with it. But you can tell the school doesn't feel the same as it did because they were trying to get used to something new, you know? But we trained our teachers to be able to deal with that. But we see kids smiling when they get out the car. We stand there, we open the door, we welcome them in, we hugged. Governor, sorry. We didn't have a choice, but you know, kids, they came up, they were excited to come back to school. But there's so much to tell you about our kids. They're talented. Yes, ma'am. Oh, we're talking about staffing right now. I just handed that in. Awesome. One of the things that Mr. Greenlee and I have been talking about is bringing back Spanish. Our children are interested in Spanish. Mandarin is definitely a district initiative. Many of our students don't really know about Mandarin yet, so we just have to introduce that concept, you know? So we're talking about that since we're going into a 6 to 8 school. So we're really excited about that, but then we have to bring it down into the lower grades because we do want to, like a dream of mine is to do some type of Spanish immersion or Mandarin immersion where the kids can spend a half a day in the language and then a half a day in their, in the English language. No, ma'am. I'm going to hand.
Thank you. So there's a couple things online I want to hit real quick. One about safety and security. Obviously a brand new building, so it would have all of the safety and security measures that we build into schools nowadays. There was another question about history. There was a number of comments here and online about history. I think that's something we definitely need to think about incorporating and actually have some history in how to incorporate that, since Howard was a pretty important project recently. So we really heard that. That's something we need to make sure we're thinking about. So thank you for all that. There was another one that I can't remember now.
There was one concerning curriculum.
So around our curriculum, Dr. Akins talked a little bit about that. I don't see her now. But yeah, we're looking at district-wide, we're looking at new curriculums, and there's been specific new curriculums over the last 3 years, specifically to Bancroft as well as Bayard. All right, I thought I saw the mic going around. Where did the mic end up? There it is.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alethea Smith-Tucker, and I am the Christina School Board District Representative for here in Wilmington. Good evening. I'm happy to see so many education warriors here who have been steadfast with supporting Wilmington education. I would just like to provide additional information from what I learned from the board perspective to maybe provide a little bit more clarity on one, the diversity and inclusion for economic development with this project. With the construction management company, one of the tenets is their obligation to actively inform and connect with diversified contractors. And they're also supposed to provide reports and data back to the school board to illustrate their findings and all of the work that they've done to justify their outreach. So that was an important measure in terms of the construction management. And one thing that was a concern. And one last thing in terms of the building. One thing that I thought was instrumental in supporting the new renovations, the rebuild of Bancroft, was to have flexible learning spaces. When they're saying 21st century learning environment, what that meant to me, as I understood it, was that we would have flexible classroom buildings, so that when it was important for our young people to have education in smaller groups, we could kind of convert and transform that classroom to fit that need, so that if they're working on project-oriented work, they have a space that supports that. Green space was so important. Here in the city, I am a city resident. My son actually attended Bancroft. There was no running space that wasn't full of concrete. And one thing that I could support is that our babies will actually have green space to run and be safe and not be exposed to potential car wrecks and so forth and so on, because we're so close to our streets. I'm available to listen, to learn, and support the improvement of our particularly Wilmington schools. This is where I live, in addition to the broader Christina School District. We are here to hold our superintendent accountable for making sure that he's implementing the plans, including the strategic plan, which is to focus on how our children are learning, educating our teachers, their environment, and how we connect with the community, with our parents, teachers, and other stakeholders. That work is underway as well. So I just wanted to share a few highlights. And one thing I'm very proud of what I've heard this evening was the thought of reconnecting our children in our neighborhood. If we can have our middle school and our elementary school together, we can actually know who our neighbors are. We can kind of build that foundation of community that we once had. And I'm looking forward to that and allowing this building to be the catalyst for that, but also this building to welcome the community in, to be a part of it, so that we can have the transfer of knowledge, so we can have parents learning. Dr. Akins has started a pilot program with the Parent University. So I hope that through that success, we'll be able to broaden that. So I really want to share some of the good things that's happening in addition to supporting this project, but also the learning of our young people.
Oh, I just wanted to add too, one of the incredible parts of the design model was really making sure it was a hub for the community. Here at Bancroft, we provide so many wraparound services and resources to our families, not during the day, but evening services as well too. So one of the things that we talked heavily about is really making the new design where it's functional and flexible for our families to access from the outside, which would include a state-of-the-art food pantry, laundry services, including our wraparound services, our mental health services for our families. So that was a key component to this new design, to really have that connection with the community, where it was real functional for them to access as well too. And you also mentioned the green space. That's something we don't have here right now, is functional green space for us to have an urban garden and opportunities for our students. So the new design includes those green spaces as well too. One of the barriers too that we've had with like our track and field team, we don't have space here for them to practice. So having that field and a possible track field around that for our students to have as well too is really important. There's state-of-the-art science classrooms being discussed in the new building as well too, a state-of-the-art media center as well. So I just wanted everyone to know that there's been lots of conversations happening around that design model. So the community, there's that community piece there where it's just functional, or families can access it at any part of the day as well too. And we did start our work groups for strategic planning for the district. So there were a lot of things that came up this evening and there's multiple members in the room that are on some of those work groups that we can take back, which we're focusing on building trust with the community and building relationships and instructional conversations as well too. So I think we gained a lot of important information here tonight to take back to that as well.
Thank you. Before we continue, we've gone about an hour longer than we were supposed to. So there's a number of people who've already left, and I don't want to have more people leave before we talk a little bit about next steps. And then I am going to stay. So if people want to come down and ask questions, they are more than welcome to. But I just want to make sure we get to next steps before we lose any more people. So do you want me to hit them? So just so you know, a couple of things. One, for members of the community that live right around here, there's obviously, we're talking about design right now, but at some point in time, we're going to be talking about construction, right? So, and there's going to be a totally different level of concern when we start talking about construction as opposed to design. So please understand, this is not the only meeting. This isn't even the only meeting on design. We're going to come back to you all, and we're going to have information about sort of the next layers of design that incorporate some of the things that we talked about tonight. And then as we get into construction, we're going to also have meetings to be able to talk about what's that going to look like? How is things going to get organized? How are we going to, what's going to happen? Noise, right? There's going to be concern. So just please understand, this is not a one-time conversation. This is going to be an ongoing conversation over the next few months and years, because this isn't going to be done next week either, right? We got a long time before this project's going to be over. Whiting Turner is setting up a website, email address, as well as a phone number, so that you'll be able to have a direct place to ask questions or voice concerns. It's not up yet, but we're going to be getting there soon. And we'll have that out on our website as well. Did I miss anything? All right, so with that, I just want to thank everyone that came to your thoughtful feedback. We truly appreciate it. Again, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to be here. If you have questions or other things you want to share, please go ahead and come down and talk to me. But I do want to be respectful of everybody's time and just wrap things up and say thank you. So have a wonderful evening. Please come back. Tell your neighbors that we were listening and that we want your feedback, and it's worthwhile to come to these things, because that's what we want. We want the next time to have a little bit more people in this auditorium. So everybody have a great night. And again, I'm sticking around, so thank you. Did you want to wrap up with anything? Any final words?
Thank you very much. It is just the beginning of this process, so please stay engaged. Let us know what the district needs to do to make this building something that we can all be proud of and a great asset here on the east side of Wilmington.